All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD 1000 Web Development Technologies course, I have been creating a series of video presentations based on the Mozilla Developer Network Learn Web Development series. I'm currently in the CSS portion of this and under the module for CSS layout, and it's time to talk multi-column layout. And it says here, it gives you a method of laying out content in columns as you might see in a newspaper. And again, some of this we've already taken a look at. All right. So it says we can start by downloading the starting point file. So let's do that as we have been doing. So right now it looks like this simple multi-column example. All right. So to start, it says the div with a class of container will become our multi-call container. We switch on multicall by one of two properties, either column count or column width. So let's use the column count first, as it says. All right, so just putting that in, taking our container, which is the div that holds everything. What we're saying is we want this, all of these, to be in a 3-column format. All right, well, let's see what that did. There you go. And it says here, the columns that you create have flexible width. The browser works out how much space to assign each column. All right, so it looked pretty much like this. One thing that you will hopefully notice when you go in and do that, though, is if we take a look, let's go back, come on, there it is, and we start to change this, it gets pretty ugly because, and we'll talk about this a little bit later in media queries, but it's still set up to be 3 columns, and it's doing the best it can to be 3 columns, even though technically we haven't given enough room to do so. So we might want to set it up so, for example, maybe when we get here, we want it to 2 columns, or when we get down to here, we want it 1 column, etc. We're going to get to that momentarily. So change your CSS to the column width as shown here. So we're going to use column width in here rather than using a column count. So setting it to 200 pixels. All right. It's got enough room for 4 different columns at that. Okay. If we change it from that to like 300, then what should happen is that it should go down to 3 columns as an example. And I could keep going, but hopefully you understand what I'm getting to here. So that, oh, I guess that's 2. So let's try making it, how about in between there? So 275 maybe? 200, 300, that'd be 250. And there it's 3 column. All right, well, that's kind of what we had before. So what if we send it down to, I don't know, how about 150? And you'll notice we now have 5 columns. So again, this is just to show you that you've got your choice. You can either use the width or you can use a column count. All right. As it says, the columns created cannot be styled individually. There's no way to make one column bigger than the other column. It says you have 2 opportunities to change the way that the columns display. You can change the size of the gap between columns by using column gap, or you can add a rule using column rule. So let's just add this gap here. And I don't know if it was still 200, but we'll make it 200 again. And we'll add that column gap. All right. So look at the gap between these. And you'll notice, okay. And as it says, you can play around with this. You can combine different things, etc. Notice they put a rule in here. So rather than just having this, notice they've got this, that looks a little ugly, but they've got this dotted type of thing in here. Let's put that in and see if that works. And let's take a minute and look over everything that's in there. So it's saying we should have 3 columns. All right, that's the column count. All right, and it's also saying that we should have a 20 pixel gap between them, and between them we should also have a 4 pixel dotted red, colored border. And there you go, it's down to 3, and there's the rule. All right. So next we're talking here about spanning columns. And as it says, you can cause an element to span across all of the columns. In this case, the content breaks when the spanning element is introduced and continues below it. So in other words, notice what we have here. Note it isn't possible to cause an element to span some columns. It's an all or nothing type of proposition. Okay? All right. Columns and fragmentation. The content of a multi-column layout is fragmented. It essentially behaves the same way as content behaves in page media, such as when you print a web page. All right, when you turn your content into a multi-call container, it is fragmented into columns, and the content breaks to allow this to happen. Sometimes, as it says, it'll break in places where you won't want it to break, for lack of better words. All right, in the example below, it says that we have used this. So let's grab this. And let's put that in here. All right. Then we want to come and add our container. And also we're adding a card in here. So let's see what this does. So I want to get rid of this container that was in here, replace it with this, and have this card. So what is that going to do? All right. Well, it's pretty obvious what it's doing, how it's breaking things up, etc. in here. Looks a little weird, for lack of better words, but you can see, hopefully at least, how you could start laying some stuff out in very different types of ways. All right. So it says here, to control this behavior, we can use the properties from the CSS fragmentation specification, which, as mentioned, gives properties to control the breaking. All right. So we will change our card so that it looks like this. So notice we've got page break inside a void. All right. That's the key takeaway right there. This should look a lot better. And really, when you think about it, what they're saying here, there you go, is it's kind of like when you print stuff out. All right. So for instance, if I wanted to print an article out, so let's say I wanted to print out this thing called a modern CSS reset, and I want to print right there. The chances of it breaking exactly where I want it to break on a page, that isn't bad. That isn't bad. But notice right here, I mean, maybe I want this to appear on a new page because as it currently stands, it looks bad. And that's the kind of thing that they're talking about in here. All right. So it looks a lot nicer like this. All right. That's it for multi-column. Not a lot to say about it. And again, we had talked about it before. There is a test your skills. Please feel free to take a look at it. And next, we'll jump into responsive design, which is, again, one of the most important things there is as far as being able to have your website look good in different types of media. Desktop versus laptop versus tablet versus phone, etc. So we'll come back with that in just a couple moments.